On June 25th, 2015, Chris Wanstrath was a happy man. What began as his passion project 8 years earlier had reached its first stable release, Atom 1.0. Free, open source, and built entirely on web technology, Atom was a first of its kind code editor that would fundamentally change the landscape of software development. And Chris knew that. But what he didn't know is something buried deep within Atom's codebase wouldn't just power the most pivotal applications of the late 2010s, it would also eat Atom alive. In 2007, 22-year-old Chris Wanstrath stepped into a bustling San Francisco bar. He was there for a weekly meetup called I Can Has Ruby. Yes, I know 2007 was a very different time for memes. Sitting alone in a booth to take a break from the commotion was a man named Tom Preston Werner, an acquaintance of Chris. According to Tom, some unknown feeling compelled him to wave Chris over and show him a project that he was working on called Grit. This was a little piece of software that allowed you to access Git repositories in an object-oriented manner using Ruby. And this turned out to be the early version of GitHub. And I'll get into more details in an upcoming video, which subscribe for that. But put briefly, Grit modernized the clunky command line interface of Git, making it way easier to share and collaborate on code projects. And as a self-taught programmer, Chris was used to the hurdles of digging through forums and online tutorials. So needless to say, he loved Tom's project. And of course, the rest is history.
Could you explain to us in a few words, what is GitHub?
What is GitHub? It's a social code repository. The whole point is that you can share your code with other people very easily, and they can share their code with you.
And why did it become so famous in such a short period of time?
Because lots of very cool people chose to use it.
But to Chris, modernizing Git was actually downstream from the ultimate vision that he had. He wanted a modern, accessible code editor for a new generation of programmers just like himself. A few months later, in mid-2008, Chris began work on a side project called Atomicity. It was a code editor inspired by Emacs, a popular customizable application Chris referred to as the holy grail of code editors. But Emacs was just as old as Chris, and its age was definitely showing. For example, in order to customize or build packages for Emacs, users had to learn its proprietary language. The issue was actually the norm amongst code editors of the time, and a major point of frustration for Chris. He wanted a hackable code editor, built using familiar, high-level web languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to open up customization to a wider pool of users. Now, as GitHub demanded more of his time, Chris had to shelf this project. But in 2011, GitHub launched a platform that allowed developers to edit code directly on GitHub itself, leveraging a technology called ACE to give code editor functionality in a browser setting. And this caught Chris's attention, prompting him to dust off his old side project, and just 3 days later, he had a new Atomicity prototype, one that also used ACE, but in an OS X web view. A web view is pretty much what it sounds like. Think about when you open a link in the Reddit iOS app. It's still in the app, but functions like a browser wrapped inside of it. So for developers, a web view allows for customizable keyboard shortcuts, simple installers, and access to desktop-only features that you couldn't get on like Chrome or Internet Explorer. But it's also extremely tedious to develop. In order to access desktop-only features, developers needed to know a lower-level programming language to bridge the front-end JavaScript to the back-end. It also only supports one platform too, so code would be different for Windows and Linux. And to top it off, different operating systems meant different built-in browsers and different results. Is a bit of a nightmare. So 1 year later in 2012, Atomicity switched to the Chromium embedded framework, which let the developers embed a Chromium-based browser into their desktop apps, which provided a more consistent experience across devices and operating systems since Chromium was already built on those operating systems. Now, in keeping with his vision for a hackable application, Chris wanted to use JavaScript everywhere throughout Atomicity. And typically, JavaScript only ran in your browser. But an up-and-coming technology called Node.js leveraged Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine to let you run JavaScript nearly anywhere, even on the desktop. And since the Chromium embedded framework didn't integrate well with Node.js, Chris and his team used Node WebKit, which combined Chromium's rendering capabilities with Node.js, transforming Atomicity from a simple code editor into a fully featured desktop application that was fully powered by JavaScript. And thus, the Atom shell was born, a powerful engine deep within Atom that allowed this software, built using technologies, to run as a desktop application. And for the devs, Atom shell was simply a way to get their app running.
I think it was like 3 people originally were sort of just working on it like at GitHub before it was even like talked about at all. And they had tried, there was like NW.js, and then there was another one that had the word Chrome in it. I think both of these libraries tried to do the same kind of thing, which is allow you to build desktop apps. And they ended up talking to this guy Chang, who had been working on NW.js, and he also shared this vision for like alternate version of what the library could be. And so he started working on it at GitHub, and it was just called Atom Shell. It was literally just built to build Atom. It was just the thing that existed so Atom could exist.
But by the time they realized its true potential, it would already be too late.
Hi, everybody. This week, I'm proud to join the students, teachers, businesses, and nonprofit organizations taking big new steps to support computer science in America's schools.
One of the things that will determine whether a country is successful or not in the future is whether you teach maths and science and, crucially, computing in the right and the modern way.
Our best resource is sitting here right in this room. You, young people, Canadians themselves, ready to step up, ready to create the things that those old guys like us couldn't even imagine.
This is a new life skill opening up a world of opportunity for men and women.
Atom had its public beta release in February of 2014. The timing was perfect, enabling it to capture a massive market of fresh programmers who found Atom's convenient features and modern aesthetic much more approachable than other options that are on the market.
This thing exists for no other reason than to just make Atom hackable and make me happy.
This is what I like with Atom. It will all open my files and folders here in Octopress.
Atom is my new friend, but he won't be coming to Thanksgiving. He's my favorite text editor.
It wasn't just graduates and delusioned millennials like myself seeking a career change that were drawn to it. The entire tech world buzzed with excitement. And before Atom, a fully featured development environment typically required bloated corporate software. Atom was lightweight, only needing specific additions to get the job done. It was one of the most popular betas of all time. But it wasn't without controversy. Years before Atom's release, Chris had garnered a huge reputation as an outspoken open source advocate.
I think it's to put the geeks in charge. The people at NASA who are working on this code, who are involved in the open source code, the actual people developing it, controlling the project, maintaining it, give them the power and let them work directly with people in the open source community who are interested. If you want open source to succeed, you've got to play by the rules of open source, which are, ironically, not that many rules.
Which is why one key detail in Atom's beta raised some eyebrows immediately. Atom was closed source software, meaning developers didn't have access to the innards of the application to modify, improve, or build upon. It felt hypocritical. After all, Chris's mission with GitHub was to empower developers to openly share their code. So why wasn't Atom doing this? And to add another layer of irony, one of Atom's biggest competitors was Brackets, which was free and open source and made, guess who? None other than Adobe. Yeah, that Adobe. In response to the backlash, Chris decided to open source Atom under one of the most permissive licenses, and the decision was well received. Over the course of its beta, Atom grew a substantial user base and market share. But as more eyes explored the inner workings of Atom, a new conversation began brewing amongst developers. On its surface, Atom was a powerful, if not revolutionary, code editor, but its core, Atom Shell, was something truly remarkable. And now that Atom was open source, it was free for everyone to take. When writing desktop applications, developers encounter a key problem. How do you get your application to run on multiple systems? The modern day answer is to use desktop frameworks like Qt, which compile applications into a code native to various operating systems. In short, it translates applications so they match the look and feel of any operating system that you're using. And this saves developers from the tedious and expensive work of writing and managing multiple versions of the same application. When creating Atom Shell, the development team had a similar idea, but their framework had significant advantages. First, a lower barrier to entry. Developers could use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, high-level, common languages, to build desktop applications. By comparison, Qt's core is C++, which carries a significant learning curve and a vastly smaller pool of programmers. And second, you got faster iterations. Web technologies are designed for rapid deployment. You make a change, you deploy it, and then you rinse and repeat. No large compile times or marketplace reviews. It's just on the web. And third, code reusability. Once developers wrote a web application, they could reuse most of, if not all, of their front-end code base to create a desktop version, saving a massive amount of time and work that they wouldn't have to end up doing. And these were just a few of the many advantages that Atom Shell offered. And trust me, they did not go unnoticed. Less than a year into Atom's beta, developers were already using Atom Shell for all sorts of desktop projects, some that we're still using to this day. In April of 2015, just a little over 1 year into the beta, the Atom team caught onto Atom Shell's true potential and completely separated it from Atom's naming, turning it into what we know today. Electron.
Electron. What is Electron?
So what is Electron?
Massive companies leverage Electron to quickly develop cross-platform apps for millions of users. But as Electron proliferated, the apps that it powered, including Atom itself, started having some unexpected issues. Now listen to this. In order for Electron to run your code on your machine, it packages 3 things. 1, a full Chromium rendering engine. 2, a Node.js runtime. And 3, your application code. You essentially have to launch a full web browser instance just to run your application. As a rough comparison, imagine if every time you use Windows, you had to launch Minecraft and run Windows inside of the game. I mean, it sounds silly, but you get the point. Now, is it possible? Sure, but definitely not the most efficient way to do it. And over time, users started to notice this. Sluggish performance among Electron-powered applications, including Atom. In some cases, just to open a 2 megabyte file, Atom would take over 3 seconds and consume a whopping 400 megabytes of memory just to open it. So you're now running Cyberpunk on ultra settings just to use a text editor. It didn't take long for Electron to be notorious for its subpar, sometimes just awful speeds. But soon another code editor would change that opinion overnight. As a smaller, more nimble company, GitHub blitzed Atom to center stage. Meanwhile, Microsoft, one of the biggest competitors, was a bigger ship, as you know, and much slower to turn. Still, Microsoft's vast experience in creating developer tools was unrivaled, especially at the time. Visual Studio was one of the most popular IDEs and has undergone nearly 17 years of iteration before Atom was even in a beta release. And despite this, many complained that Visual Studio was a heavy, overkill desktop application that lacked extensibility, especially for the types of applications that were being built at the time. By comparison, other editors let you open up a file and get started instantly, no bloat required. And so in 2013, 2 years after GitHub released Ace, Microsoft responded with their own browser-based code editor project, Monaco. But as browser-based IDEs failed to gain traction over the next year, the Monaco team took a step back, instead searching for a way to develop their desktop application using web technologies. And wouldn't you know it, they found a free open source framework that did exactly that. Atom Shell. Eyeing Atom's growing popularity and market share, the Monaco team got right to work and set an aggressive launch date just 6 months out. and by April 2015, Visual Studio Code Preview was released. Developers were skeptical. Setting aside the oddity of Microsoft releasing a free cross-platform desktop application, the fact that they used bloated Electron framework was uninspiring. It was actually kind of crazy, but that skepticism quickly melted away. It was fast, extremely fast, sometimes over 4 times faster than Atom. And before developers could even react, Visual Studio Code went full open source and launched an extensions marketplace. So how did Microsoft take an infamously slow architecture and make it fast? Well, Visual Studio Code had 3 major advantages. First, unlike Atom, VS Code extensions ran in isolated processes that didn't block the UI. This meant that when you started VS Code, the extensions loaded afterwards, so you could immediately view your files or start typing and get right to work, or even have the illusion of things being a lot faster. Second, Project Monaco, the foundation of VS Code, was heavily optimized before VS Code was even conceived. And third, Visual Studio Code encoded information as binary rather than text, saving a significant amount of space.
Yeah, so really you can write really fast Electron apps, and with Atom, first of all, is getting faster all the time, but a lot of that has to do with the actual JavaScript and how it was written, and not Electron itself and Electron's capabilities. It has to do with, are you doing a synchronous call when you should be doing this async type of thing? So if you look at Visual Studio Code, which is also written in Electron, it is really fast. And I don't feel like when it came onto the scene, I don't think that people said the same thing about it.
And over just months of updates and community roadmaps, Visual Studio Code secured a substantial market share. Both code editors were still competing fiercely, splitting the user base across 2 applications with an uncertain future. That is, until Microsoft made its next move.
Time now for our stock of the hour, and that is Microsoft. Shares of the software company put in a new all-time high this morning as Microsoft announced it's buying GitHub for $7.5 billion. Abigail Doolittle has the details.
In 2018, Microsoft announced its intent to acquire GitHub for $7.5 billion. Although this was met with scrutiny in the European Union, both EU and US regulators would approve the deal without any conditions. For developers, a single question was, what would happen to Atom? Thousands of developers had spent countless hours of unpaid labor building plugins, fixing bugs, and reporting issues for Atom, a code editor that they just did out of love. And now Microsoft had the power to squash its biggest competition. But Nat Friedman, GitHub's new CEO, went on Reddit personally to calm fears, promising that Atom would continue to be supported.
Atom is a fantastic editor with a healthy community, adoring fans, excellent design, and a promising foray into real-time collaboration. At Microsoft, we already use every editor from Atom to VS Code to Sublime to Vim, and we want developers to use any editor they prefer with GitHub. So we will continue to develop and support both Atom and VS Code going forward.
But even if developers trusted Freeman, it quickly became clear his promise couldn't be kept. Visual Studio Code continued to release monthly updates while Atom stalled out and lost community interest. Atom plugin developers were reluctant to make the switch. After all, they've been burned before by betting on a single platform. Some hedged their bets by simply porting their Atom extensions over to VS Code. But within 6 months, Atom commits frequency dropped by 76%. Within a year, core developers jumped shipped to the VS Code team. 419 days after Nat Friedman's promise, the last major update to Atom was released. Now, was this just a natural death, or was the plug being pulled? In 2022, it was announced that Atom was sunsetting.
We've decided to retire Atom in order to further our commitment to bringing fast and reliable software development to the cloud via Microsoft Visual Studio Code and GitHub Codespaces.
Microsoft may have made a better product using the same engine that powered Atom, but for the developers who built Atom's ecosystem, this wasn't a market evolution. It was an abandonment with a corporate speak goodbye. For plugin developers, the rise and fall of Atom was an all too familiar story. Contribute hours of labor watch the company profit, then get abandoned when something better comes along. While it may seem that Visual Studio Code took the crown and reigned forever, this story really has no end in sight. One year after Atom was sunsetted, 3 of its core contributors announced a new code editor, Zed, a performance-focused editor powered by Rust, now boasting over 70,000 GitHub stars. That same year, 4 friends forked VS Code to create Cursor, a VS Code-like editor with better AI integration and currently the fastest-growing software company of all time. Atom had 1.1 million users when it died, but it won, not the editor, but the idea. Right now, Slack, Discord, Microsoft Teams, and Visual Studio Code itself account for billions of daily interactions running on Atom's framework. With open source, death isn't the end. Your code lives on in competitors, successors, and even the thing that killed you. Every cursor blinking in VS Code carries Atom's ghost. And when VS Code eventually dies, well, someone will fork it too and make something better. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.